All right, so we got to talk about the Xbox Handheld. Now, some new information has come up. This is about the third-party handheld. Didn't even realize there was a third-party handheld, but apparently there is. That is slated to come out later this year, according to these articles. And there is still a first-party handheld made by Microsoft coming out like 2026, 2027, so that's down the road a bit. But before we talk about all that, gameplay today is Fumes. Now, they had a recent update, and they added a lot of new stuff. Very interesting concept with this game. If you like Twisted Metal meets Mad Max, this is definitely the game for you. Definitely check it out. I'll have a link in the description so you can take a look at that. And so let's just jump right into the articles here. First one, they both come from Pure Xbox. The first one here is report Xbox Handheld for 2025 being made by Asus will feature console-like interface. So you can see kind of a mock-up of the console here. And it looks like a fairly standard handheld, but with Xbox-style controls. So that's kind of interesting. Now, one of the caveats is actually in the second article, but we can see here this is going to be followed by a first-party handheld at some point in the future, maybe 2027. I've heard both 2026, late 2026 and 2027. But, you know, it's down the road quite a bit. So this is going to kind of tide us over, I guess. And for a tide-over style handheld, there are some caveats. But, yeah, this is going to be made by Asus. And, you know, they're known for the ROG Ally series, as it says. And basically, it's going to be a fairly standard Asus handheld, but with, you know, Xbox-style controls. It's going to integrate with the store. It's going to be running Windows. Now, running Windows is kind of an interesting thing because, you know, Xbox doesn't technically run Windows. So what is it Windows, or is it something else Windows in the back end? And the other thing I have to say about that is, you know, we see with the Steam Deck that when you're running Windows, there's a lot of overhead versus when you're running Steam OS, you know, Linux powered. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't. Well, we don't actually know, but I'm surprised they didn't trim that down or make a caveat that it's not like full-blown Windows with all the overhead. But we'll see if that's the case or not. I mean, there are other handhelds out there that run Windows just fine, and obviously this will be able to do it, but you might not see the performance you would on a very slim, trim, like, you know, Steam OS style or very Xbox-like interface where it's trimmed down to the basics of what it absolutely needs, and there's no extra overhead, no extra garbage in there like, you know, Windows 11 has. But we'll see what happens with that. I don't know. The articles don't say anything about that in that respect, but they do say it's quote-unquote running Windows, so we'll see what happens. Now, the second article here is a little more details. Xbox 2025 handheld release date, price, and other key details teased in latest report. And, you know, they said that it could be released as early as June 2025. However, they more think that that's going to be the announcement date with a release date later in the year, second half of the year. They also said down here in terms of price, it's rumored to be $499 to $599 at launch, and that could change based on various features. They also kind of teased at like 2 price points, so maybe these are the 2 price points, but it didn't really say that for sure. Where one of them is like a cheaper model, the other one's more expensive, with either more powerful hardware or a larger SSD. I would say probably, you know, going with the SSD, it'll probably be twice the storage capacity or something like that. It does tend to be a problem with developers when you're starting to throw different hardware at things. Then you end up being like a PC ecosystem where it's tough to nail that down. Whereas, you know, I think with the Steam Deck, where it's a baseline set of hardware, like this is the Steam Deck hardware, you pay for, you know, more storage, you pay for an OLED screen. Basically, that's what the Steam Deck is. So that the targeted hardware on the Steam Deck is the same across all those variations. It's a lot easier to go grab a Steam Deck and say, all right, we know that this is the hardware at the baseline, and this is what we need to target. This is what we need to have it running performant on. Whereas if you have a lot of different, you know, specs, a lot of different tiers of hardware and, you know, processing power, RAM, graphics, whatever, you know, that gets complicated, and bigger developers can do it no problem. But smaller developers like me, it's like, yeah, I got a Steam Deck, so I know that this will run on any Steam Deck out there, and better hardware than that. So that's kind of how smaller developers, indie developers, solo developers really target their games, or at least how they should. I don't know if all of them do, but that's kind of how they try to figure out their target hardware, is to find the baseline across their platforms that they're targeting, and get that hardware and actually run it on that hardware and see what happens. That lets you really figure out what's going on, and it's a lot easier to do. So kind of a sidebar there. Sorry about that, but yeah, it's definitely better to have unified hardware across the platform. So I think Asus would probably end up doing like storage and screens and that kind of thing. So that's pretty much what we're going with here. The other interesting thing is that this is supposedly going to only run the PC style games. So the games that go under the, it's right here, Xbox Play Anywhere. So console specific, Xbox specific games are not going to run on this console. So my question is, why is it called an Xbox handheld? It's not. It's a PC handheld that runs, the shared Xbox titles. Now that said, I mean, Microsoft does say that they're working on bringing more of those games over, those Xbox specific games over to be cross-platform, and they're really targeting this hybrid ecosystem where you can play it on a PC, you can play it on an Xbox, you play it, it's Xbox Anywhere, right? It'll go anywhere you want, and you can run it on a streaming stick, and it'll work fine, because we're Microsoft and we want to target everything, and everything is now an Xbox, right? I don't know how well that's going to work, but with this kind of an approach, where they're getting Asus to make a handheld for them, that's not a bad way to go. And I think they're going to need to open up their Xbox specific platform a little bit better to actually do this, because they're competing with Steam. They're competing with a massive library, a massive catalog of games, and an open platform where anybody can make hardware for it. That's a lot different than what Microsoft is doing specifically with Xbox. Now, with the Play Store, with the Windows side of the operation, it's a very different story, because basically you make a Windows game, it can be targeted to Xbox and vice versa, as long as you do it the right way and you don't tie it in with specific Xbox libraries and specific Xbox hardware. It'll work fine. It's just not many people are doing that. They're looking at, this is our PC release, this is our console release for Xbox and PlayStation and maybe Nintendo Switch. So there's a very big separation there, and I think Microsoft has to bridge that gap themselves, where they're trying to expect the industry to bridge that gap, and I don't think that's going to work too well, because, like I said, they're competing with Steam. Steam already has this in the bag, so they have to really step up their game to be able to enter this market. But that said, I think this is a good first step. I think this is progress towards making that Xbox Anywhere a reality. And if they keep moving forward, if they don't stagnate, which Microsoft has a tendency of doing, I think they'll be all right. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Again, gameplay here. I'm learning new things as I'm going through this gameplay here. But this is part of the new features, is this giant crawler thing that you have to run up, and I didn't even make it to the end. I mean, it was actually quite challenging, and I didn't really know what to do. So that's kind of why it was a fail for me. But yeah, this is part of the new gameplay feature, and definitely worth checking out. So I'll include that link. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like these kind of things, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys later.